do it while afraid. In everything I'm saying, I can tell you like for sure, I had fear. I was afraid. But it didn't deter me. Rather, I said, you know what? I will still go ahead and do it. Before I sent that email, I had doubts.
Yeah.
But I said, what's the worst that can happen? I just want to get a response back.
Yeah.
But what's the opposite? I'll get a response back.
Yeah.
And I am a living testimony of the opposite.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Couch Convos. We have on the couch today an amazing guest with a career spanning over 10 years. She's an exciting guest to listen to. So without further ado, I'll give the floor to Rachael.
Hello.
Hi, lovely having you on the couch with us today.
Thank you for having me here.
How are you doing?
It's a lovely weather today in the UK. It's warm in London and we have the sun out. So I'm very excited.
That's interesting because really we don't really have the sun here. So
that's okay.
Okay, that's exciting. So Rachael has an exciting career spanning over 10 years. So would you talk to us about that? How did this happen?
Oh my God. Okay, so I was saying to you earlier that I don't believe it's over a decade. It's like crazy. Even my niece isn't up to 3 yet. I don't even feel like patient with this. But anyway, so how did it come about? It literally came about, I guess. After school, my university was in Nigeria, University of Port Harcourt. After which I started my career in technology. So I was a project manager. That's how I started off with a technology firm. And then I bounced off a couple of other industries. So I'll say over the span of 12 odd years, I have worked in about 3 industries. So technology being the first, and then I moved over to oil and gas. And then I went to the non-banking financial institution sector, which was a pensions funds administrator company. And finally, or right now, I'm in finance. So I'll say 4 industries. So let me correct that.
That's interesting because that's one of the questions I was going to ask you about today. You've worked across 4 different unique industries. What would you say is the pro and con of being in all of these separate industries?
Pros, cons. I don't know about cons. I most actually say pros.
Yeah.
The underlying fact I've had across all of these is technology. I would say in finance now, I'm more in core banking, sort of, but everything else has been technology driven. So as a project manager, I was responsible for building out technology products. And then I worked in process optimization as well, looking at manual processes in, the company and automating those processes. And then I worked in service delivery as well at some point. But now I have done a little bit of pivots, which is quite interesting. Over the last 2 odd years, I have gone into payments, and that's like an interesting world on its own.
Yeah.
I would say for my career, it has been, I have looked at, I'll say 2 really strategic forces. So technology and payments, for me, it really wasn't planned. I started technology shop going back maybe when I was about to get enrolled in university. I wanted to be a doctor.
No way. No.
That's a story for another day. And that's a story, whatever, for another day. And somehow I found myself in computer science, or studying computer science. And at the time, I really didn't see the vision. I really didn't see how technology was going to evolve and transform the world. But when I started working, in 2012, and I realized that the regular PC wasn't what was going to continue to be. We started, that was when iPhones came up, and then we had like screens, right? Yeah. So I realized that I was definitely on the right path. And I think maybe somehow that has helped structure me in identifying progressive industries. And don't get me wrong, there are loads of progressive industries, but somehow it's made me really curious about just furthering my career in industries like that. And that's where payment came in. I stumbled into payments. I was looking for a job. I wanted to change my jobs. And I saw this role and it was cross-border payment. And I thought it was interesting. I had zero experience in payments. I did a cold call to my boss, literally, sent a cold email.
Nice.
Drafted out a cover letter.
No way.
Put my resume, and I was fortunate enough for him to respond. We had a 30 minutes one-on-one conversation. Seemed to have liked me. That's what I'm doing today.
Very cool.
Yeah. To me, it's actually a testimony, the way, how I got this job, how it evolved. But yeah, so far, I would say in the last 2 years, it has been me being on my toes because it was me moving from my comfort zone to an area where I really didn't know much about. I came from Nigeria where all I had was an ATM card. And my ATM card, I literally needed to slot it, put in an ATM, and then we evolved to online payment.
I mean,
So, moving to not just payments, but cross-border payments really blew my mind, and it still blows my mind. And one of the things, my role specifically is commercialization. And somehow I have been doing that without me knowing that I have been doing that while I was doing that. Because it's about really establishing the product and helping other partners within the bank to be able to sell the product. So I have to be an SME. So how does somebody who doesn't do payments from an SME, right? But anyways, it all goes back to evolving yourself or evolving myself, being a quick learner as well, pushing myself, being thrown in the deep end, and either learning how to swim or drown. So I had to learn how to swim.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, this is also inspiring, to be honest, and there's a lot to pick up from everything that Rachael has said. But one thing I wanted to make mention of is the fact that one thing about your background that's pretty unique is that you moved from Nigeria to New York and to London, and now you're a VP at your company, which is exciting. I mean, you've almost got into like the pinnacle of your career. I'm sure that's...
I'm taking that. I'm sorry.
So, but then I think that one thing I wanted to ask was, how did you move from Nigeria to New York? Was that the call to your boss, the cold call to your boss?
No.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be with, people who have reached the peak of their careers. It could be with your friend, which is what happened in my case. So I have a friend who recently graduated, and she was in the UK over the past 2 weeks or so. And she just sent me a message and asked, would you be interested in this program? And I went to the website and literally read the entire website. And I told her, please, it's too good to be true. And then she was like, just try. And I'm like, okay, no problem. Cut the long story short, I tried. I gave it a shot. And I got an offer. I got 2 offers, actually. So I got an offer from HSBC. I was in Lagos at the time. And I got an offer from my current company. Both in the banking industry, global banks. And one of the things that I have always had in me, or it's been a dream, actually. I've always wanted to have a global experience. I just didn't want to work in Nigeria. And I saw this or that as the opportunity for me to step out of the country, work in a global organization, and know what it feels like. And that was it. I moved from Lagos to New York, the US. I didn't believe it. It happened like bam, bam, bam. And then I chose to work with my organization. And then I moved back to Lagos. And then I worked remotely. That's when COVID happened. A lot had happened in the period. And then here I am in London. I applied. So again, I was doing something similar to technology. It was a role tagged digital strategy. Fantastic. I felt like it was crafted for me because it was very similar to what I was doing before when service delivery, where I had to work with so many stakeholders, right? So for me, it was really interesting. And then I kept looking up within the organization. It's a big organization. I work with global, so I didn't want to keep all my eggs in the basket. So I applied for this role.
Amazing. That's really, really interesting. What would you say it was like working in New York and working here?
New York is a city I love.
Would you go back?
Oh, yes. Sometime in the future. I would say if it's work-wise, it's pretty similar. And the reason I would say similar is because the organization is global.
Yes.
American bank.
Yeah.
So culture-wise, the culture is quite similar.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
But I would say in terms of the city is different, right?
Yeah.
New York is bold.
Yeah.
New York for me is Lagos on steroids.
Love it.
London is relaxed, it's chill.
Yeah.
It's very, you know,
Yeah.
I don't know, it's very historic.
Yeah.
New York is like, everyone is exactly, it's really fast. The city is open 24 hours. I love that. You know, I want to be able to wake up at 12 a.m. or 2 a.m. and feel like, okay, I can go to a comedy club. London, it gives a beautiful vibe. You may not just have that, but yeah, I'll take, you know, the city is different, but working, I'll say it's quite similar because, again, we service companies or organizations all around the world. So, let's talk about where we are in the world. Our culture is pretty much the same.
Okay, that's interesting. I think that one thing that was very predominant in this conversation is how you want something, you go for it. Yeah. You talked about the fact that you networked, and beyond the caliber of the person you're networking with, you had a friend you reached out to, or your friend reached out to you, and even though at first you thought the opportunity was something too good to be true, you put your best foot forward and you got that. Another thing you mentioned was how you did a cold call to your boss. Tell us about that. Were you already in the company, or were you just like, you saw this opportunity and you're like, yeah, this is for me, I'm going to do it? Tell us about that. How did you do that?
Both. I was in the company, and then I saw the opportunity. It was for internal vacancies, or it was vacancies, it was for internal. And I read the JD. Okay, so the interesting thing about the JD is most of what was described in there were transferable skills.
Nice.
So I knew I could do it. I just knew that I didn't have the, you know, payments experience. But when it comes to the core job or what was required, I knew I could do it. And that's what I said. You know, I just sent a cold email saying, I'm Rachael. I work currently in this department. I've seen this job description. This is what I do. I believe that my skills are transferable. And I would love to have, 30 minutes call just to understand who you're looking to join the team, who you're looking out for. And, he responded. I was like, sure, set some time on the calendar. I did. We had a 30 minutes conversation. We said, oh, wow, okay, the role is closed, but let me see if we can have this role open again. That's interesting. I know. So I was like, okay, and it was open. I applied. I went through the entire interview series, and here I am.
That's really nice, and it's a testimony in itself, like you mentioned.
It is.
One big thing there is that don't let your experience deter you, right? Yeah. You don't have to have all of the requirements of the role. And what she has just described as how she reached out to that manager is something you can actually write down from watching this interview and practice it, flex that muscle. What tips would you have for someone? What advice would you give someone? This is a over 10-year career. What tips do you say, or would you say has helped you thus far? And what advice would you have people who are like, they're finding it difficult to keep pushing? Because I was talking to someone yesterday and they said, the average time for people, average tenure is 2 years. But you've done this for over 10 years. Interesting experiences as well across different continents. What would you say or advise someone who is looking to grow and develop to get to this kind of level?
Do it while afraid. In everything I'm saying, I can tell you, like, for sure, I had fear. I was afraid. But it didn't deter me. Rather, I said, you know what? I would still go ahead and do it. Before I sent that email, I had doubts. But I said, what's the worst that can happen? I just wouldn't get a response back. But what's the opposite? I'll get a response back. And I am a living testimony of the opposite. I got feedback. So no matter what it is, always something else I'll say is open your mouth to ask and see. Because sometimes we have it up here in our heads, but we think that people would understand or decipher. People have their lives, they're dealing with things. So open your mouth and speak. Do it even if you're afraid. You may not have everything, to your point. You may not have all of the qualifications. You may not tick all the boxes.
Yes, yes.
If you do, you know that you're resilient. You know that you're a go-getter. You know that I can do this.
Yes.
Go for it.
Okay. I really love that advice, and we'll make sure to highlight it in the course of this conversation. This has been a fantastic interview, Rachael. I think one last question I'll ask you before we wrap up is, what do you do for fun?
Okay, fun. So, I'll say since I moved to London, I have been settling in. I would say I'm not settled in. So maybe for fun, I joined the book club recently. I have started reading again.
Okay.
Life fiction books, but I'm enjoying that so much. So I read one book a month, minimum actually, of one book a month.
That's good.
Maybe I'll just throw this out here. Not a promotion, not sponsored, nothing. But I am reading this book called Rachael. A fellow female who is quite senior in the industry. While I met her, she recommended the book and it is fantastic. So it's Rise Up by Patty as a lawyer. As a woman, even men. It's all about a woman who's speaking about her journey and rising up to be a CEO and what the pros, the cons, things she did well, things she didn't do so well. And I'm taking tips.
For sure.
So I recommend that. But anyways, to your points, I am reading now. So I've started that culture again. And I also like my movies on Netflix. So
Netflix and chill. Okay, that's interesting. I'm not going to bother you with so much questions anymore. But one thing that you mentioned is even the book you're reading is preparing you to be senior. Rachael. It has been an exciting interview, and I'm glad I had you on the couch today. Thank you so much, Rachael. First time I met Rachael, something that stuck or stood out for me was her confidence, and you could see that shine through during this interview. So thank you, Rachael, for being on the couch with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I had the best time.
I'm glad. Thank you so much, Rachael. Thank you, everyone, for watching us today on Couch Convos. We'll be releasing another episode soon, so look out for it. Please follow, subscribe, like, and share with your friends, and email us on couchconvos@elevationuk.org. We'll also drop that in the description box. See you on the next episode. Bye.
Bye.